Hello, Veteran Outdoorsman here. I'm going to talk today about two very versatile, very highly used cartridges, and arguably the two most commonly used cartridges in North America. The first, the 30 Winchester centerfire, or 30-30. The next, 30-06. Give a little bit of history on both cartridges, and then go into what makes them so good and what makes them good choices even today after over 100 years of use. Now, the 30 Winchester centerfire, or 30-30, was introduced in 1895 in the 1894 Winchester, which I've done a review on. Please check that out. Original ballistics, 160 grain bullet at roughly 2,000 feet per second. Give or take 50 to 100 feet per second, depending on the loading, depending on the source you read. But 160 grain bullet at around 2,000 feet per second tends to be the consensus. Again, started in 1895. It was soon produced in Marlin rifles as well, also in single shots, etc. Was produced in bolt actions, several lever actions to this day, pump action rifles, and even a copy of it in a rimless version was used in a semi-automatic, but it was not the same cartridge. It was called the 30 Remington. But you can even use the same reloading data in that cartridge. You can use the same dies, is what I've been told, except you have to change the shell holder when reloading. Regardless of if that's true or not, that's just what I've been told. Very, very similar cartridge. Today, two standard loads and two really nice premium loads. The standard load, a cup and core bullet, 150 grain or 170 grain at 2,400 or 2,200 feet per second, respectively. There is hand loading data for different weights. There are premium loads by Hornady with a 160 grain flex tip bullet, I believe around 2,400 feet per second, 140 grain flex tip solid copper bullet at 2,450, I believe. Not much difference. That bullet's also available in free bore or something like that by Hornady, and the bullets are available as components as well, and gives the the cartridge quite a ballistic boost by higher ballistic coefficient bullets, slightly more velocity for the bullet weight, and flatter trajectory. Very, very versatile cartridge for whitetail, hogs, black bear, etc. Many deer have been killed with this, but also elk, moose, etc. at closer ranges. The next cartridge, the 30-06. Oh, the 30-30, by the way, it was 30 Winchester centerfire, 30 WCF. You'll see that on many old rifles. My 94 has that. But the 30-30 designation, because manufacturers besides Winchester didn't like having the Winchester name on their firearms. Today they don't seem to have a problem. Back then they did. It was called the 30-30, taking the nomenclature of the old black powder cartridges, 30 caliber bullet, 30 grains of powder, but it was not 30 grains of black powder, it was 30 grains of smokeless powder. 30-06. The origin of this cartridge is in the 03 Springfield in a cartridge called the 30-03. You don't hear about that. It was the same basic cartridge with a slightly longer neck, used a 220 grain, I believe, round nose full metal jacket bullet. Um, Later changed, not much later, a few years later, changed to 150 grain Spitzer bullet. Again, a full metal jacket at around 2,700 feet per second, called the 30-06. There was 30 U.S. Army. There were different designations, but commonly referred to as 30-06, standing for 30 caliber 1906. It has a considerable amount of taper, actually, which makes it feed fairly well. For the length, you can't really tell, but if you put a micrometer here and here, you can tell there's a considerable amount of taper. I don't know the exact degrees. A nice shoulder for headspace, a fairly long neck to use longer bullets, quite a bit of case capacity, and with hand loads, you can boost the performance of this considerably. But factory ammo is no slouch. Standard 150 grain bullet around 2,900 feet per second. 165 around 2,800. 180 grain bullet 2750. And again, these plus or minus 50 feet per second, depending on the manufacturer, depending on the load. It doesn't go fast enough that premium bullets are needed, but really does shine with premium bullets. And we'll get into that in a minute. But originated in the 03 Springfield, bolt action military rifle, heavily copied from the German Mauser. Also chambered in the M1 Garand, chambered in numerous bolt actions, semi-automatics, pumps, a few lever actions, including the Browning BLR, the Winchester 1895, and I believe the new Henry's line of box magazine lever actions as well, but I'm not 100% sure of that. I know there are some high-intensity cartridges chambered in that, and if they don't chamber to 30-06, they should, and probably will soon. But the BLR, the Winchester 1895, as far as lever actions, pumps, the Remington 760 7600. Automatics, the BAR, obviously, the BAR fully automatic rifle in military use, the BAR civilian rifle, semi-automatic rifle, and the Remington 740, 742, 7400, and I believe now it's called the 750. Universally called the Woodmaster. Very popular hunting rifle from the 50s all the way up to today, especially here in the Midwest. Numerous bolt actions, single shots. If there's a rifle out there that chambers a long action cartridge, chances are it's chambered in 30-06 if it's chambered in nothing else, because it is probably the most popular big game cartridge today. Now, take the rest of this as standards, not as gospel, that similar cartridges of these two ilks will serve you for at least 90% of the types of hunting you're going to do in North America and most other continents. Let's get back to the 30-30. Again, 30-30, 150 grain bullet around 2,400 feet per second. Now that is out of a 24-inch barrel. Out of a 20-inch barrel, you're going to lose up to, say, 200 feet per second. So say 2,200 feet per second, just as a standard. 170 grain bullet out of a 20-inch barrel, which is a typical carbine length barrel, you're looking more closer to 2,000. Still, plenty of velocity and energy for what this cartridge was intended to do. Remember that when it was first invented, this was a high-intensity cartridge and very flat shooting. As far as sporting cartridges go, there weren't any out there that shot that fast. There were some military cartridges that had been used in rifles to be sporterized, such as the 30-40 Krag. And actually that came a little bit later. There were some Mauser cartridges, etc. But especially in North America, sporting cartridge this was it. This was the flat shooting cartridge of the day because muzzleloading rifles, big bore black powder cartridges, 1,400, 1,500 feet per second was really pushing it, but they shot large pieces of lead that penetrated very deep and had a lot of energy, had a lot of power, were great game cartridges, but the trajectory was much flatter with this. Now it's limited by the flat point bullet. Um, the Hornady ammo that I mentioned earlier does help with that considerably. Let's get into that now. If you typically hunt whitetails or mule deer or blacktail, you typically hunt something deer size at 150 yards or less, even 200 yards or less. A 30-30 will take care of your needs. With 150, 170 grain bullets, you'll find that it has more than enough energy, more than enough velocity, more than enough power, low recoil, light, handy rifles for the most part, and it will easily take care of those needs. You may think, well, I'd like to upgrade to, say, a 6.5 Grendel, which is a good choice. And they make them in a nice micro bolt actions now. Very handy, very light. I have a friend that has one, and he really, really likes that rifle. And from what I've read of the cartridge, having not fired it, it seems like a dandy, and I would never stop someone from buying that cartridge. But say you already have a 30-30. You've already got a nice peep sight or a scope on it, and it shoots fairly well. You've been able to get your loads to shoot 1.5-inch groups or less at 100 yards. Upgrade your ammo just a little bit instead of buying a new rifle. Go to the Hornady Flex Tip ammo, the Lever Evolution, or the other full bore or something along those lines. With the Flex Tip bullets, with higher ballistic coefficient bullets, flatter trajectories, heavier bullets at similar velocities to what you're going to get out of the 6.5 Grendel. And you get better performance within hunting ranges, say out to 300 yards. Better or similar performance out to, say, 300 yards. And all you have to do is buy a couple boxes of slightly more expensive ammo instead of buying an entire new rifle. Chances are you don't want to get rid of your 30-30. You want to have something in addition to it. By upgrading your ammo, you can get similar ballistic performance out of an old workhorse. You're already used to the rifle. You're already used to the trigger. You know how it shoots. And you can reach out there a little bit further depending on what you want to do. They say that it's good out to, say, 300 yards. Personally, I'm not sure I would try that, but certainly for paper punching, things like that. But if you just want less guess in your trajectory, you want a slightly more efficient bullet, that's a way to go. That ammo can be found for $25 or less a box, which isn't horribly expensive when you're talking centerfire ammo. I do know that standard 30-30 ammo can be found around $15 a box, upwards of $20, depending on what you have. And if you're going to hunt in woods, you're going to keep all your shots less than 150 yards, there's no need to upgrade your ammo. But if you would like a slightly flatter shooting cartridge with a little more efficient bullet, by simply upgrading your ammo, do yourself a big favor. Now, 30-06, similar. Very old cartridge, typically loaded with standard cup and core bullets like the Remington Core Locked, the Winchester PowerPoint, Federal's various bullets. Very, very good cartridge. Works very well with cup and core bullets. My personal choice, that's what this is here, 150 grain Remington Core Locked. I have killed numerous whitetails with this cartridge. Would not hesitate to shoot hogs, black bear, etc. with that very cartridge. If I were to hunt larger animals, big mule deer, caribou, elk, moose, etc., I would step up to 180 grain bullet. I would skip the 165s unless maybe doing a combo mule deer elk hunt, something like that, wanted a little more range. Personally, I'd step up to 180 grain bullet. A core lock or a PowerPoint would suit me just fine. But you may be thinking, well, I would like to get a slightly flatter shooting cartridge. And I'm considering a 270. The difference out to say 300 yards is a few inches, and you're probably not going to notice that difference shooting under field conditions. So let's skip to 270. A 7mm Magnum, a 300 Win Mag, 300 Short Mag, etc. Something along those lines. Specifically, 300 Magnum staying in 30 caliber. Not 300 Weatherby, that's a big step above, but 300 Winchester, 300 Short Mag. If you study the ballistics, especially if you handload, with a premium bullet and what's commonly known now as super bullets, something with a polymer tip, something constructed for game, not a practice bullet, not a target bullet, such as a Barnes Tip Dex, a Swift Sirocco. Some people will say the AMAX. I personally don't like that on game. The Hornady SST, the ballistic tip, when kept in the right ilk, it does tend to open up quite a bit. So does the SST, but it has an interlock, so it does hold together a little bit better. But say you're only going to hunt whitetails, but you want something that carries its energy way out there. The ballistic tip may be a good choice for you, but the Swift Sirocco and the Tip Dex, bullets of that ilk, they have a much higher ballistic coefficient and create a much flatter trajectory, especially when hand loaded. Factory ammo, 2700, 2750 is pretty typical. Once you get past 300 yards, you see a significant decrease in trajectory over standard 180 grain cup and core bullets. Now, if you're planning on buying a 300 Win Mag, a 300 Short Mag, a 300 Remington Short Action Ultra Mag, not the standard Remington Ultra Mag, the Short Action Ultra Mag, all of these have similar performance. Difference being two are short action, one's long action, so you may be able to get a more compact rifle. Remember, that'll kick harder. If you're considering something along those lines, because of flatter trajectory, more energy at long range, you get out 300, 350, 400 yards, and you shoot those cartridges with standard cup and core bullets like a core locked, an interlocked, a PowerPoint. The 30-06 with the premium high ballistic coefficient bullets, such as a Hornady SST, Swift Sirocco, Barnes Tip Dex, in 180, 190 grains, depending on what, actually shoot flatter and take over the 30 out the 300 with premium ammo. Somebody says, well, but that means if I shoot the premium ammo in the 300, then I'm going to get that much more performance. And that is 100% correct. But if you already have a 30-06, spending another, by the time you get a good scope and everything, $600, $700, $1,000 on a rifle versus $50, $60 on a few boxes of ammo, $70, $80 on a few boxes of ammo, makes a big difference. If you're like me, you don't want to give up your 30-06, you're not going to trade it. So instead of adding another $800 to $1,000 rifle to your arsenal, including the scope, even if you went with a more economy rifle like a Mossberg ATR, a Savage Axis, etc., by the time you put a good scope, you're talking $500-$600 at least, bare minimum. But for a few boxes of good ammo, you can reach out there long range and have good energy and actually surpass some of the less than premium 300 Win Mag loads at longer range. So if you have a 30-30 and a 30-06, and you want better performing rounds, simply upgrade your ammo. With a 30-30 and a 30-06, you can take, you can feasibly take any game in North America. Um, Countless grizzlies and brown bears have been taken with a 30-06. Many people do not recommend it, but many guides that I have spoken to personally say that they would rather someone show up with a 30-06 that they know how to shoot with good bullets than a 300 mag that they just bought that they flinch every time they pull the trigger. Many people find a 30-06 to be the upper end of the recoil that they can handle, especially as we get older, as we have injuries, as our joints hurt, etc. A 8 to 9 pound rifle in 30-06 is fairly pleasant. Too much more than that can get painful with prolonged use. I've shot lots of hard kicking rifles over the years. My personal choice is a 30-06 for if I had to have one centerfire rifle to hunt everything with, from varmints to big game. A 30-06 certainly gets the nod. To add a second rifle to that, it would be a 30-30. To add a varmint specific caliber, okay, I changed a little bit. If I wanted a big game caliber, it would be a 375 Holland and Holland all the way. But that's what we're talking about. You live in North America. You hunt whitetails, maybe antelope. You'd like to hunt elk. You'd like to hunt moose. Maybe you'll get a chance at a grizzly someday. 30-06 and 30-30 will certainly serve your purposes for these things. 30-30 for closer range. 30-06 for longer range. The typical shot, even with a lot of practice, generally 300 yards is a good upper limit. 30-06 has that beat in spades, especially with the premium bullets I mentioned. And if you have a rifle that shoots sub-minute angle groups with the premium bullets I mentioned, and you upgrade your scope to, say, a 4-12 by 40, something along those lines with an adjustable objective, it won't be much heavier than your standard 3x9. It will be a little bit, which helps with recoil. And remember, it's over the balancing point, right over the magazine well, the action, etc. So that little bit of weight at the balancing point will help with recoil. I'd rather carry a little more weight and get kicked less than have a lightweight rifle that I don't want to shoot when I finally get the target, and something that I have trouble holding steady. So you upgrade your scope. Personal choice would be Vortex or Leupold or Nikon, but your mileage may vary there. Whatever you're comfortable with, you get a good quality scope. It really doesn't matter what brand it is. Everyone has had bad experiences with one brand or another, but a good quality scope. Get something 4-12, 4-16 power with an adjustable objective, and that premium ammo. You've upgraded your rifle into more of a long range rifle that also still works with at close range. Also still works as a standard deer rifle. Typical deer rifle around here is a bolt action in 270, 30-06, 308, 7 mags, somewhere along those lines, with a 3x9 variable scope on it, 40 millimeter objective. Typical rifle weighs somewhere between 7.5 and 10 pounds scoped. Typically has a 22 to 24 inch barrel, typically a bolt action. By upgrading your scope a little bit and upgrading your ammo, you now have longer range capability and with two rifles that are the most common, a 30-30 and a 30-06, you can achieve a lot of different things just by changing your ammo, possibly changing your optics for a lot less money than it would be to buy a new rifle. And you can breathe new life into these great cartridges. This is Veteran Outdoorsman. Um, Thank you for taking your time watching my video. I ask that you, if you enjoyed what you saw, like, subscribe, etc. And again, remember Christ is King. I wouldn't be doing my part if I didn't remind you of that. And think, have I accepted Christ as my Savior? If you haven't, please don't wait another day. This is Veteran Outdoorsman signing off.